Hello, this is Paul's Church. My name is Nash. So, we're shooting inside today because if anybody knows of what's going on in the area, yesterday or a couple days ago, we experienced some pretty crazy storms. And wave 2 or 3 is coming through right now with a bunch of wind. So, to keep my paper from flying away and your ears from being blown out, we're doing it inside today. Today, we're going to be learning about my favorite Bible chapter and collection of verses. Now, my favorite book is Romans, and I will still encourage you guys to continue reading Romans because after I get done with this section, I'm going straight into Romans. So it'd be really good for you to be watched or read up on that before we start talking about it. But no, today we are talking about my favorite chapter. And if anybody knows, that is First Corinthians 13. Um, and I know that First Corinthians 13, especially 4 through 8, get kind of labeled as the wedding vow or wedding vow. You know, I was just married, I would know that. Wedding vows. Um, because it lists off everything that should be expected of someone if they are going to love. And for me, I'm really a fan of lists. You give me a list of things to do, I'll get them done. If you give me a list of ideas that pertain to another, kind of like Venn diagrams and graphs and stuff like that, I'll remember it forever. So I think God had that in mind for people like me when he had Paul write First Corinthians 13. And I'm just going to run through the list real quick. These are all attributes that are immensely important. If you are claiming to love someone and you don't follow all of these attributes, you are doing something approximate or bastardized of it. So here's just the simple list that I like to remember. And I even have to write them down because I have terrible memory. But the famous list is love is patient, love is kind, does not envy, does not boast, it does not be arrogant or rude, it does not insist in its own way, it is not irritable or resentful, it does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, endures all things. Love never ends, everything else will fail. And I pretty much just wrote down the verse. I just took out some of the connecting grammar to save what little time I did. But if you can memorize that list and claim to love someone, you're better off than someone who just used I have a saying that love is the only word that is used way too much and not enough at the same time. And it kind of comes along the lines of there's an internet video, only about 48 seconds long, but it's an old internet video of someone asking, what is love? And the punchline is love is a four-letter word that you can use in various ways that are mostly positive. That's not love. And if anybody knows that video, comment down below what it is. Though, you know, they can be used in various ways that are mostly positive, sounds like a decent way to explain what love is to first timers, I guess. But what we forget a lot of the time is how important love is. We love to talk about what love is itself, or we love to acknowledge if somebody else isn't being that. We're very good of claiming to be guides, but all we ever do is really tell other people not what not to do. Let me find back in my notes here. There we go. And now my second point talks to this. What are the two greatest commandments? Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Are you doing all that stuff that is love to your neighbor? But that whole section of what the attributes of love is and how to love it, what not to do, is really interesting. It's kind of like John 3:16 to me a little bit. Everybody knows John 3:16. If you don't, look it up now. But it's kind of we skate over the first three verses of that whole chapter. But I think those first three verses might be just as important, if not more, than the rest of the chapter when it comes to the attributes. Um, so the first three chapters really do elevate love to how important it is. Um, you'll hear me get into it a little bit later, but there are people who claim to be Christian and know all things about being a Christian, and they have the best theology, and they have the best theories, and they have the best the bibliography of references to early church fathers. I'm a sola scriptura guy. If it contradicts the Bible, it's not worth my time. Simple as. So, if I know everything but do not love, I am a. So, this is what I was getting at. There's so many people that want to become master theologians or blood sport debaters or be able to quote off ontological and transcendental arguments as much as the next guy and debate the differences between the Orthodox and Catholic filioque or are giants real or Nephilim. That's all great. I'm going to let you know, though, Nephilim are real. Giants were real. Maybe are still. But you know those guys that they read the Enochian text, the first and second, whatever books of Enoch, uh, or they get into the Gnostic texts like the Gospel of James, or, as a default Protestant, there are missing books from my uh, Bible, right, according to the Catholics. But all that kind of doesn't really matter. Now, it matters to the sense that it's good to know what you believe, why you believe, and how to explain what you believe, especially in these complex ideas. There's some people that don't believe God because they merely can't understand that they can't understand. You can know every angel of every choir, of every ring, in every dominion, in every name of prophets, and theologies, and theories, and schools of thought. But if you don't love, what does it say? Resounding gong. It says straight up in the first verse, if I have angel, I use a message because it's using some pretty interesting language here. And I know that it's not like, don't base your theology off it, but I think it really does kind of explain where I'm coming from on this. Um, if I speak with human eloquence and angelic ecstasy, if I speak with utter human eloquence and angel's ecstasy, if what I interpret that to be is if I understand, if I have the wisdom to carry myself through life every day in a way that is wholesome, holy, divine, set apart, it has to have love. And you can have direct line to angels, or you pray your liturgies, you know your rosary, you know your prayer beat, you can do all of that stuff. But if you walk outside, get into your car, and as you're driving down the road someone cuts you off and you get on their tail, it doesn't really matter. If someone shorts you change and you get rude with them, doesn't really matter. If your food takes too long at a fast food restaurant and you start getting rude, everything before that doesn't matter. It's that like that. You can be Albert Einstein and know the secrets of gravity and physics, right? But he flips off everybody he sees. Who cares about if he's a good physic? What about a physics scientist? He would be a physician. But anyway, if you can do all these great, wonderful things, but you don't show love to someone else, it doesn't matter. Same thing. Speaks God's to power, and this is God's word to power. Sorry, but this is also when I talk about the online debaters, when I talk about the theologians, your Twitter callbacks, your gotchas kind of guys. One in particular, and I'm going to call it out, is Andrew Wilson. He claims to be a devout Orthodox Christian, but the way he treats everybody he comes into contact with, is not loving at all. It's not patient. It's not kind. You see where I'm getting at with this? You can give anything, you can give everything away to the poor. Just like the story of the young ruler. Remember the young ruler when he came up to Jesus and said, "Hey, I follow all of it. Mark 19, Mark 10, and Mark 18, or Luke 18. Matthew 19, Mark 10, Luke 18. This is talking about the um, giving all your stuff away to the poor, the young ruler. Follows all the commandments, follows all the laws. What should I do? Give away to the poor. You can do that and still have it be worth nothing. If you sell all your things to give to charity, while one side of your mouth you're saying I'm doing it because I was commanded to by love and by God, but you're actually just doing it to puff yourself up to show how pious and lowly and ascetic you are. If you're doing it to puff yourself up, it's worth nothing. Let's see, where did I say that it? Oh, it does not boast, it's not a braggart in any regard, and is not arrogant or rude. It does not have a feeling of self importance. You can be a ascetic monk in a cave in the middle of nowhere where you eat bugs and live off of dead pelts and you have berries, just like John the Baptist. But if John Baptist was not doing what he was doing outside of love, and the Bible says himself itself, John the Baptist was the second holiest man alive outside of Jesus. I would imagine he would not be considered that if he was not doing what he was doing out of what he understood love to be. Let me get to my next point real quick. There it is. Now, there's one I did skip over, but this one was also really great. Command mountains to jump. Love is greater than any miracle you could possibly do. And I read a couple of commentaries about Paul, about this particular. But like commanding a mountain to jump is a reference to having the faith of a mustard seed to move a mountain. You can have faith greater than every man alive and do great works if allowed, like a jumping mountain. And if you do it out of arrogance or out of your own self seeking goals, then it's worth nothing to God. It has to be out of love. What good is it to do great works if it's not to do great works for people who need it? Yeah, you can move an entire mountain, but did that feed your neighbor? You can put people on the moon. Did that feed the sick? You can have cured all diseases and given everybody enough money to survive. But if it's out of you puffing yourself up as the savior or solution, then it is worth nothing. Nothing you do matters unless it is through love. And that's even what the last part of the first three chapters talks about. You are bankrupt without love. You are worth nothing if you are not loving. And I've talked a lot about how important love is, but I've not, got into what love is other than that first reading off in the beginning. So that was my intro to First Corinthians 13. Eventually, I'm going to go through every single attribute themselves and kind of pull it out and do the exegesis and go through all the Paul stuff and Jesus stuff. And maybe, if I dare, go to the Old Testament. I know, read the Old Testament. It's a slog. Anyway, patience. You know, patience is like kind of another word that is skewed in what it's supposed to mean and it's supposed to do. We are not supposed to be patient of the wrongdoings of the world and evils of the world. We're not supposed to steel ourselves in a way that we grow accustomed to what the world is doing. We have to remain patient with people. We don't practice patience with evil, we practice patience with people. So, first, I'm going to go through patience, and then I'm going to go through the rest of the attributes, maybe probably grouping them up to two or three over the next couple of weeks. And I will try to put a video out every Friday. But for patience, we have a couple Bible verses here. I'm going to read through them, paper, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. So, the first one would be, if you want to turn with me, Galatians 5:22. If you want to turn to Galatians 5:22, I want to turn to Galatians page 5, chapter 5:22. There we go. I'm going to read from the New American Standard Version. 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self control. Against such things there is no law. So, straight up, he even re-mentions love. But in there is patience also. Ephesians 4:2. And if everybody remembers, that was the fruits of the Spirit. And if any of you Nazarene kids like me, how do you remember the fruit of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self control. That's how I do it. Anyway, Ephesians 4:2. With all humility and let me do that again. With all humility and gentleness, with patience, showing forbearance to one another in love. So, love and patience again. So I'm sensing a little bit of a theme here. Colossians 3:12. And so, as those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved, but honest heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another, and forgiving other whoever have complaint against anyone, just as the Lord forgave you. We'll go with the final one, Thessalonians, First Thessalonians 5:14. And we are to urge you, brethren, admonish the unruly, encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, and be patient with all men. So do you see how Paul is encouraging us to practice patience with one another and to be a part of the list of love? Paul must have been on the spectrum or something, because he does a lot of like very nuanced, specific definitions and cross references kind of a thing. Because those four examples right there, patience and love and gentleness, were in almost all the verses, at least referencing each other. So, yes, love is patient. What does that look like in today's world? What are we supposed to be patient of? So, I mentioned a little bit earlier, when the car cuts you off and you want to get on their tail, you don't do that. Kind of a passerby point. There's not really much ownage. Someone cuts you off, you get on their tail, 10 minutes later, you forget about the whole thing. But there is something to be said about when you're directly interacting with people. You're kind of rushing them along. Oh, I'm in a hurry. Oh, I've got somewhere to be. I need to do something. And you're kind of pushing them along. And, oh, I got to be there at, oh, that's another example of patience. And I've seen firsthand people try to like excuse their rushing of the people that are taking care of them. Like they're kind of and stepping on their toes. Like these people are serving you and you're not being patient with them. Imagine doing that 100 times to the same person during their shift. And again, I go back to an old maxim: if everybody did this thing and everyone would be better off, then it's probably a good thing. If everyone was patient with everyone they talked to, then everyone would be better off. Makes sense, right? Try using that in the future. If everyone did blank, everyone would be blank, and that is blank. If everybody was patient to everybody else, it would be good. It's pretty simple. Patience within your family. You know, I'm pretty vocal about the intergenerational conflict that is kind of brewing in America. Without getting into much details, I am of the generation that will be the first generation to be economically and materialistically worse off than his parents for the first time in American history. I will be the part of the generation that is worst off. And I'm sorry I wasn't here until 1993. So everything that happened before that that caused today to happen isn't my fault. It's not really my problem until it starts affecting me directly. And I think a lot of men will understand that the market has not been good to us in the market at large. You know, the economic one, the social one, especially the dating market. Nothing has been good with us. We're not the ones who put that in place. And we have to interact every day with people who put that in place. We have to deal every day with people who will spit in your face when you tell them they are objectively wrong and can prove it. You can be as patient and gentle and kind with people as much as you want. But if they have the desire to be angry, they're going to be angry. And there's nothing you can do to stop that. Sometimes that just means standing there as a stoic and going through the berate of random people you don't know because they woke up on the wrong side of the bed today and you just look like someone that would be fun to yell at. We don't stand up for ourselves like that. No, we're not strongmen like that. That's not what Jesus did. That's not what Paul did. Paul's been arrested multiple times for what he believed in, and he exercised patience. He didn't try to stage a coup. He didn't try to cause harm and violence to allow his freedom to be regained. He was patient. He was arrested, tortured, beaten, stoned, whipped 39 times, 3 times, right? That. Can you imagine the scarring and the physical pain he was constantly in from the people he was sent to save? Can you imagine the frustration he would experience going to people that he had no business being a part of according to his original tradition and giving him the best news in the world, but still being treated like a pariah? How much did Paul have to go through with people? Now that's patience. A lot of translations also take the word patience and put it into long suffering. So what I'm understanding is when it comes to the famous list, patience, long temper, long fuse with people, we must do everything in our power at all times, always, to be patient with everyone we experience, always. Think of it this way: I'm a good and faithful Christian, right? Oh, I read my Bible. I know my verses. I know the liturgies. I go to church. I give the tithes and offerings. I volunteer. I can do all of this stuff. But if when that one person in church that is kind of a little off, in church, the ones that kind of you love to see them there, but you wouldn't want to sit next to them, let's be honest, we all have those groups. We've all done that. If we can sit next to that person and be patient with their traumas that they're going to bleed on you, they're going to smell like home. They're going to smell like what they ate. They're going to look like what they brought from home. They might not have a Bible. If they have a Bible, it might be old. And if it's old, heaven forbid, it might be the English Standard Version or the New American Version. I'm kidding. I like New King James. Anyway, then you can be kind. You see how it goes into the next spot? If you're willing to endure what people are putting you through, whatever you might think that is, be it torture, intentional or otherwise, neglect, intentional or otherwise, abuse, if someone is putting you through something, it is better for you to never raise a hand. It is better for you to never raise a voice or even say anything that is not love. And that's what being patient is. So I hope you guys understand what direction I'm going in when it comes to at least this series right now. I will be focusing now on the list of the famous attributes of 1 Corinthians 13, now 4 through 8. But what I really wanted to make sure I got through this message outside of patience is there's nothing more important in the world that a Christian can do, as a follower of Christ can do, than love. It even says there are three things. There we go. The three things that will always last forever. I think it was hope, love. I'll have to find this third one real quick for you. It's somewhere. But there are, oh yeah, it's at the very end. That's right. 4 through 8. Was it where there is faith, hope, and love? Love is the greatest one. Hope, which is what got the Hebrews and Israelites out of Egypt and Babylon. In faith, which is what our entire life is centered around as a Christian. Love is the most important thing to do because love is outward pointing. So remember this as you go throughout this next week. Love is the most important thing you can do anyone. It's the most important thing you can show anyone. And a really good way to start that is that person that just talks too much about stuff you don't care about, you listen to them. That cashier at the store that every time they see you, they come over and talk to you, let them. Someone cuts you off in traffic, get over it. That's the little thing you can start with. And if everyone practiced a little more patience, everyone would be better off. And that is good. So, thank you for joining me on my second message of Paul's Church. I have been Nash. I will see you here next week. Continue to read through Romans and practice patience this week.